Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig McFarlane, and we are celebrating the 27th anniversary of Jurassic Park this week, talking all the movies all week long, and once again joined by talented filmmaker and friend, Matt Watterworth. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Craig, I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm exhausted. I went for a long bike ride today.
Oh, did you?
20.6 kilometers. And that's
Whoa.
more than I've ridden in ever, and
You're not kidding.
yeah, so a little sore, but here I am,
I bet.
and now I'm just motivated and excited because we're day 4 already, and we're talking Jurassic World.
We're here. We're back within movies that have been made in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. So Jurassic World. So previously stated, Jurassic Park 3, 2001. Kind of killed the franchise for a bit there. Lots of talks about a Jurassic Park 4. Wasn't sure if it was ever going to happen. There was a lot of leaked ideas and scripts. There was talks about, a hybrid. Like they were talking about humans and dinosaurs mutated. That was a big one for a while.
Oh yeah, I feel like I heard that rumor.
Yeah. And so there's a bunch of stuff that always came out, and lo and behold, 2015, so 5 years ago already, Jurassic World was released in theaters, and is still the 6th highest grossing film at the box office of all time.
Of all time, really?
Yeah. So
wow.
we've got Endgame is number 1, and then of course Avatar, Titanic, and then it goes Rise of Skywalker, I think, and then Infinity War, Infinity War, and then good old Jurassic World, 6th highest film, yeah. And so that was massive. I was obviously very much looking forward to this movie and nervous. And there is this element that people have waited so long for a film. Could it be a big box office bomb? And turns out it wasn't.
Not at all, no. And I mean, you have a big star at the top of his game, leading the picture, which is very helpful. And I think this is. I mean, it's interesting. This is the first film in the series, sort of since I'm watching them in order, that really does feel modern, and as it should in 2015. I mean, all these films have felt modern at the time, but I mean, with the exception of Jurassic Park, which still has this modern feel,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't quite have the pace, the cutting, but it's. I mean, like, the reality is, it's a great story. It's still maybe the best story of all of them, and that shines through. But this has sort of the modern, like, it's amazing how quickly audiences' tastes change, and you have to. I keep talking about pacing, but that's just the reality. Is that the number of cuts per second has gone up considerably, and this is just what audiences are used to, and what we've come to expect at this point. So this is a very different film from the rest of the franchise, even the one after this one, because it's got sort of the uncontained vibe that all the other films have had. The next one feels very contained to me, and we can talk about that then. But this one is very very open.
Yeah. So I mean, it was an interesting idea to make it have the park actually up and running, because you never thought that was actually gonna happen, that there would be a theme park that was, we tried it and it didn't fail, and so it was all these rescue stories on the island, and lo and behold, here we go. You know what, let's try it. And it made so much sense, and I thought it was fantastic. This movie is interesting because it is a reboot. It is also a direct sequel to the films, as much as it is a reboot, and a slight remake, if you will, because there's a lot of references and homages that I'm going to reference throughout as well. But so it was an interesting one to make it be a reboot, but very much make it still indicate that it is a sequel. And
Right.
and the first is bringing in BD Wong as Dr. Henry Wu again. That's
Right.
our main connection. But then there's little things like you got Mazarani, who references how it was John Hammond's dying wish that he, make this island happen in this theme park and make it work and make sure everybody's happy and the dinosaurs are happy. And of course, you've got the visitor centers, the John Hammond Visitor Center, and there's a wonderful statue of him set up there. And when they're on the train about to go through the gate, you see the Claire's assistant is actually reading Ian Malcolm's book. Very tiny little detail.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. And then, of course, as we'll talk about later, I'm sure, them actually going to the original visitor center in Jurassic Park.
Yes.
So it is a reboot, but very much just a sequel that just happened to take place a lot of years later.
I don't know. I wouldn't agree with you that it's a reboot.
No.
I mean, but that's just my interpretation. I don't know what the definition is of reboot, but for me, a reboot is like the Batman franchise gets rebooted and Nolan is rebooting it, and so we're ignoring everything that we've seen before. Now, the word reboot certainly a franchise bringing it sort of back to life, but for me, and I could be wrong, if we're seeing previous characters, if we're seeing indications from previous locations and referring to previous things, then it is not a remake or reboot, but really just a sequel. But yeah, it's a unique sequel in that it's been so long since the first one and since the third one. Yeah, but that's just me. I don't know if that's right or not.
No, and I would agree with you. And it is and I think this is where it gets tough over the past decade, has been clarifications of reboots and remakes and sequels.
Right.
It gets tough, but
well, like and with a franchise this big, of course, you come across issues of, Star Trek has this challenge all the time, and so much so that they did reboot it and they just threw out canon, because you can't keep telling a story in the same world without running up against, but that character wasn't here and this person hadn't met this person until this point, and so it starts to limit storytellers in what they can do. And so that's why it's attractive to just say, well, let's throw it all out and start over. But then you end up with like these different universes, and Marvel has done this in the comic book world, especially with many different incarnations of the same characters, even happening simultaneously and but somehow not interacting with each other, and then they slam the worlds together. Anyway, but this franchise is huge. Like even at only 5 films, now coming 6 films, there's a lot of challenge, there's a lot to cover. And what I think is so interesting about this film is that it fulfills the promise of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And of course there's the great scene with Jake Johnson's character wearing the old Jurassic Park t-shirt, but it's crazy to be like, wait a minute, I didn't even think for a second. The first thing that blew me away about this film was that I assumed they would just go back to like, okay, we're trying to start the park again. But no, the park's been running for 10 or 11 years at this point. Yeah. And we're in full swing. There's nothing going wrong. Everything, we've got all our systems are down. There's great communication. And I was like, oh, what a unique place to tell this story. Rather than trying to get it started again and sort of rehashing it not even being open. I love the idea of just saying, no, it's been open for years and years. And what problems does that create?
Exactly. No, and that's what I love about it. So we've been open for 10 years, and this is where this movie is very smart in a different type of way than the other previous films. And I will, because people everywhere was like, well, this is stupid. Like, you're making a hybrid dinosaur, because it turns out we got the Indominus Rex. But they say it is, this park's been open for 10 years. Like, these dinosaurs were so amazing at first, but now it's, as humans, look at movies and theme parks, we're always looking for the next best thing.
We're bored.
Exactly.
Something new. After
10 years, we want something more. And I 100% think that this would go the right way. And it's so accurate. And a lot of people had issues with the park and thought it was product placement, but that is indicative of what the theme parks, Disneyland, Disney World, Universal Studios, even SeaWorld, like they all have, and they have that best line, and it's like Verizon Wireless presents the Indominus Rex.
Yeah.
And Big John,
Yeah.
oh.
And the
And
other
it's
brilliant
so,
the other brilliant layer of that is the commentary that it's making on itself as a franchise. And like, are we sick of this? Like, do we really need a fourth one of these films? And they answer that question, and I love that it's commenting on its own existence in that sense.
yeah, and Jake Johnson again has that wonderful line, like talking about the original Jurassic Park and how just great it was, like, and he's just referencing the original movie, and he's saying it for the audience, like, this is the best part, this is what we love, and so I think that's great. And then all of a sudden it's like we're seeing, all right, well, what is Jurassic World gonna do? What can this hold up? And man's greed, and we start to lay the groundwork for what's happening in Jurassic World 5, and what will happen in Jurassic World 6 is that there's some shady people behind the scenes, Dr. Henry Wu being one of them, which was a nice surprise. So I like that they took this character who had one scene in the original movie, had a bigger role in the book, but never had the idea that he was going to be evil. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, never mind. So I like that. That was fun.
Totally.
I think they did a great job with the cast. So this one, yeah, we've got, other than Henry Wu, it's all new characters. And of course we got Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. And interesting to note is everybody thinks Chris Pratt and he's the lead, but Colin Trevorrow, who's our director this go round, who I think just did a fantastic job, he very much was like, this is weird that everybody like says it's Owen Grady, like it's Claire's story, like Claire's the main person, and she very much is. But Chris Pratt is the guy that we were all there to see.
Right. Although I love, I really, well, firstly, I really like Colin Trevorrow, but let's get back to him. But Bryce Dallas Howard she's fantastic. But I don't know that she totally brought it in this film. I mean, I don't have any major complaints, but overall, I wish I had seen a little bit more range from her, because I know she's capable of it. I mean, she's done some really incredible work. Colin Trevorrow is an interesting dude. He directed this movie called Safety Not Guaranteed,
right?
Which was sort of his big claim to fame, and I guess what kind of got him the job. And that movie is super weird and but super awesome. But I think there's been, he was supposed to take on a Star Wars movie, right?
Yes.
And in fact, he was involved in the writing of, I think, a couple of them, or I'm not sure, but I know that when Carrie Fisher, or you go ahead, I'm not sure your connection's strong, but go ahead. Oh, did we lose you? Oh, there you are.
Oh, my internet is being wonky, freezing up. Technical difficulties.
So anyway, I think he wrote the Rise of Skywalker, what was supposed to be the Rise of Skywalker movie, but then when Carrie Fisher died, it sort of threw those plans out the window, and obviously he didn't get to. So I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm sort of suspicious of who he is, as far as like, is he a nice guy? Do you know? Is it like, is he? I worry that he's kind of a dick, and I'm not quite sure where I'm getting that from.
My understanding is he's a nice guy. I've seen interviews with him. He was very much working with this story for Jurassic World, and this was like super exciting for him because he just did a small, weird, kooky indie film,
Right.
which is a lot of fun. I enjoyed that movie because it was very, very. I don't know what I was expecting, but
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you had this big fanboy who was
How did he
really
get this job?
I think he heard that something was happening and he wanted to be a part of it,
Huh.
and managed to, I feel like Spielberg must have seen his movie and was like, this guy's
Maybe,
fine.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
then Colin went and showed that he was a fan,
right,
and
right,
and he helped develop the story and
right,
overarching theme for this trilogy that they're working on.
right. So the reason I ask is because the MCU has had a lot of success, not perfect success, but certainly a lot of positive results from finding directors who are like a little more indie, a little less expensive, but do an incredible job because they're either again super fans of the franchise or just have a really interesting and unique take, and then frankly not paying their directors very much in comparison to like massively budgeted films like these ones are. But I mean, you look at a guy like James Gunn who took on a property that was virtually unheard of in the MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy, and made it incredibly successful and incredibly profitable. And so I wonder if this is some of that. Like, let's find a director who is not going to cost us, 20 million or $10 million to hire for this. I think, yeah, I think overall he's done a really great job. He might have the best visual language, when we've talked about this in previous podcasts, of anyone, including Spielberg. I hate I don't want to at least in the original Jurassic Park, because there's just a visual language here that is cohesive, and it's a really challenging thing to get right. I mean, this is the boring stuff about camera placement and camera movement and camera direction, and there are a few errors here and there, but I mean, frankly, Jurassic Park has more, and I think that's just by virtue of them trying to do something really, really challenging. This is a lot easier to do now because not just visual effects are easier, but just the tools you have on hand and on set are I think make this an easier story to tell as well, much more so than 27 years ago. So yeah, I mean, I sorry to derail us, but what about Jake Johnson? If we were going back to the cast, I was sort of surprised to see him in such a small role. He's sort of blowing up at this time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I lost the sound for a moment there.
What about Jake Johnson? Why is he in such a small role here?
And okay, so Jake Johnson is returning for Jurassic World Dominion.
Really?
Pretty much everybody, like a lot of people will talk about in Fallen Kingdom, they're returning, and Jake Johnson is returning. It's surprising because it's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
His name was Lowry, and I kept thinking it was Larry. It was like,
Right.
but it was like, it's Lowry. It must be his last name, and they call him that, or maybe that's a real first name. Never heard of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting because at this point, New Girl was happening, and this was one of his first major roles, but it really wasn't that big. It was just kind of, I think, just to be the comic relief is what I kind of feel like it.
The as far as and Vincent D'Onofrio is I think one of the great actors of our generation. He's unfortunately not used to, I think, as great effect as possible here. But I really, for some reason, I really, really love Irfan Khan's performance as Masrani, who's our new Hammond character, and I don't know if it's just the dialogue and how much he seems to genuinely love what John Hammond set out to do. But there's something about his performance and, of course, his sacrifice sort of that makes him super tragic. But actually, the conversation he has with D.B. Wong's character about who authorized you to do this? Who authorized you to make this killing machine? And he's like, you did, bud. And it's such a great piece of dialogue there.
It's interesting because he does a fantastic job, and I absolutely love him. I'm sad that I'm sad that he actually has passed away in real life because he's just super talented. And I wish that we could have seen more of him in the Jurassic World films, because I think he does a great job, and he has that compassion that Hammond has, um, but like almost more like to an extent. Like he's more compassionate, and he cares more about these dinosaurs, and he cares about the crowds. Like, and he makes it we make it very clear the first meeting of him where he's flying the helicopter,
Yeah.
and he's asking about like, how's my park doing? How's the dinosaurs? And he's like, no, like, are they happy? And you can look into their eyes. Like, he really cares about these creatures.
Yes. He's got this childlike wonder for this park, which is exactly what it needs, I think.
Yeah. So
Until it causes this big mistake.
yeah, and then you got your kids who are your standard. You got Nick Robinson and Ty Simpkins, who your standard. I mean, they get a little bit to work with. They're dealing with their parents' divorce, which is very, one of the first easy, clear references to the original Jurassic Park movie.
Right.
Of the kids coming with the divorce parents.
Yep.
And they're both very talented actors. I mean, Ty Simpkins was in Iron Man 3. Yes, Iron Man 3.
Oh, right.
He's the little boy that helps out Iron Man, Tony Stark.
Yes.
And then Nick Robinson does a phenomenal job in the movie Love, Simon, where he is a teenager struggling with his sexuality. Does a great job. So both fantastic young actors, but we just don't give them a lot in this movie. I think they're just more of the token things, but also to kind of add to Claire and her, who she is as a person. And I would agree, not giving her enough range, and it's evident in her first like kind of interaction with the teens, with their kids or her nephews. Like, we get it. You're like, you don't really know them, and you're like, it has been so long, but it's just not the strongest performance, I guess.
Right. But I do love, I don't know if it's the same scene, but maybe it's later, but where she doesn't know what time they would go to bed, or if they go to bed at the same time. Such a great line.
Separate. But there's another, so here we got, this is start of references to the original Jurassic Park movie. So just like Tim and Lex see their grandpa John Hammond, is he's coming down the stairs, and they call out for him, and this is the exact same scene where Claire's coming down the stairs all in white as well, and her
You're right, yeah.
Out
oh man, I didn't even realize it totally mirrors that scene.
But to separate who the compassion that Claire has versus Hammond is, she's on her phone and she sees the kids, but she continues with her phone, and she even walks.
Right. Oh, I think we lost you again. You still there, Craig?
Yeah.
Oh,
there we go.
You're coming back, I think.
Okay. Technology's fun, people.
Yeah.
I'm in my sister's basement, right by the modem, but apparently that doesn't seem to work today.
Not fast enough. What? Sorry, what were you saying though? Say that again.
So yeah, we've kind of we see instantly that Claire just doesn't seem to.
Right, her disassociation with the kids. Yeah,
and she like walks right through the holograph dinosaur, which, I mean, it's just a holograph dinosaur, so it doesn't matter. But it, really setting up who she is,
right.
And it's old business. Her nephews are visiting her, and she sends them off with the assistant who has to be the nanny. So it's great fun for the assistant, I'm sure. But.
Right. All right, so should we dive into like the story a little bit?
Yeah, so we've got we've got a fully functioning theme park 10 years in, and they decide they need to mix things up. So we've created the Indominus Rex, completely hybrid dinosaur. We don't know what of at the beginning here, and we don't know what's going to happen, but this thing seems to be very smart, as we are evident when Maserani goes and sees it with Claire, because they have to lower the meat in on a wire, because it was attacking, and it's
Right.
going and smashing, and it's trying to find a way out. Like, this thing is pretty evil, and they had to increase the size of it because it's bigger than they thought. So we're
Increase the
always,
size of the paddock. Yeah.
yeah.
That
So we're
that's another great piece of exposition, that they're building more. Like, as we first visited, they're actually raising the walls as we're sort of getting our first introduction.
yeah. So it's very clear that this may not have been a smart idea, and so then we get introduced to Owen, and in this little other subplot going on with the velociraptors, and they're smart and they're training them, and Owen is the alpha, and he's got the 4 raptors there. I don't know if the raptors are, like, I guess these are the only 4. We never see or hear about any other raptors on the island, but there seems to
Yeah.
be 4 in a location that it doesn't seem like visitors can come to. So I don't really understand the point of breeding raptors if we're not going to let anybody see them.
Yeah, well, and it leads into this question of, like, who or what, other than Vincent D'Onofrio's character, is InGen, and how do they play into the park at this point, and why are they there, sort of, and why do they increase their presence? I mean, I guess we know why, but what is InGen at this point?
Yeah, so InGen has been bought out by Maserati.
Oh,
I think
okay,
Maserati Global, I think, is what the name of his company is.
okay,
So, but InGen still has is like still named InGen and is
yeah,
there. But it's becoming clear that there's a lot of and Hoskins mentions it later. Like, there's stuff above your pay grade. Like, there's a lot of
yeah,
different
yeah.
branches
There's
going on. Some military defense, it sounds like.
Right. So, well, certainly in D'Onofrio's case, and yeah, maybe they've become sort of this shady research and development for military purpose type company, and that I guess that's fine. But yeah, going back to the Raptors, the way Jurassic Park 3 leads into this film, as far as what we talked about when Grant is doing his conversation about the intelligence of the Raptors, is so like, just a perfect transition into what we are learning about them here, and it's like really well, it's just really well executed, that we're sort of learning more about them, and okay, Owen seems to have some control over them, but he will be the first to tell you he has no control, and that it's a relationship. But then we're forced even to go even further and test this relationship, when one of the workers falls into the paddock, and is terrified at the prospect of being eaten by these raptors. Um, I don't know, maybe the best scene for me, and it certainly has held true with, like, parody and the Lego movie. Like, there's like this moment of him holding and say, hey, is just been, it's become iconic, I think.
Yeah, zookeepers all over the world were doing it with their various animals.
Right, making their own videos. Yeah.
Whole like meme, and I loved it. It is interesting, um, and they are super smart, so I can kind of see it. And I guess the idea, like, well, when Colin Trevorrow has said that part of Indominus Rex and his whole situation was inspired by the documentary Blackfish, and
Oh,
very much, you know, these killer whales who are kept in captivity for so long and don't really get to interact, and stuff happens to them, right?
right. Well, that's a great. Owen verbalizes that stuff. He's every time we talk, he's talking about the Indominus. He's saying, like, this is the first time she's ever seen this or done this. She's trying to figure out where she is in the food chain. Yeah, I mean, that cage is pretty small for a being of that size.
So yeah, it makes sense that we've got that, but part of me just still feels like the Raptors, though. I don't know. Can they be trained? I mean, it's very clearly like, and they make points about it, but it just seems very odd. But it's very interesting because let's face it, man would try to train anything they can,
Right, right.
as evidenced by tigers and lions. But yeah, so we're setting up that this park seems to be going well, and there's great little references too, as we've got the control center, which I absolutely love, the whole control center look. The whole setup, the screens, it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it looks like we're going to space there or something.
But it's really setting up where we're at. Like,
Oh, is it me? Or have we lost Craig again?
it's happening.
Oh, you're back.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know what's happening, folks. I'm sorry. Just ramble on. No, so I was saying this is the first time that the audience has seen a fully functioning dinosaur theme park. And so we are like, this is brand new and exciting, but it's been 10 years. So they do little references, such as, there's I forget what dinosaur gets out of its paddock at one point. And they're like, oh, we got a dinosaur out. And they're like, oh, don't worry, we've got him like tased and he's going to go back to his place. And they're all just like, they don't seem to really stress the dinosaur gets out at this point.
Right. Yeah. You're talking about Indominus? Indominus?
No, they have another one early on in the movie. Like, I forget, it's just a little tiny dinosaur. It's one. I think it's the one that like headbutts people, the Pachyosaurus or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he gets out at one point, and they like talk about it, and they aren't phased by anything at this point. So it indicates that it's been fully functioning for 10 years. And
yeah, I remember hearing some chatter over the radios that are like, oh, these Triceratops are fighting again. Should I tranquilize them? Yeah, hit him with the tranquilizer. Yeah, it's very commonplace. It's very everyday. But of course, not for us. And not really for the kids who were sort of our surrogates as well. Even though Zach is a little bit older and is distracted by girls constantly, he does seem to have moments of wonder and surprise. And I mean, how could you not when the Mosasaurus, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Like that moment was mind blowing for I mean they spoiled it a bit in the trailers, but like what an incredible scene and done in a way that like feels like, oh yeah, I feel like this is exactly how this would play out in real life. Like this, like we would be all in these bleachers that would then go down and you could see underwater. And I mean it's pretty incredible stuff. And with again, we're still not quite there with VFX though, are we?
No. So they in this movie, for animatronics they use raptors' heads when they're in their there's that like little cage thing that they're in.
Yeah.
And then the Allosaurus is the one that Owen and Claire find, and like Owen is like holding its head as it's like been
after that's such a sad moment. Yeah,
sad, beautiful moment, and I'm glad they used an animatronic for it. Just the head part. So really, that's about it for full animatronics in this movie, which
really,
is really
wow.
disappointing. Otherwise, it's primarily, I think they did use animatronic. I had a head for Anonymous Rex. It looks pretty real when Owen's hiding underneath the car.
Yes.
But otherwise, it's very CGI, very special effects heavy,
right.
Not all of them worked out so well.
Yeah. I have a question for you. So Claire takes Owen to inspect the paddock, the Indominus paddock, as Masrani requested. What's the deal with the security guard guy who's schlubby and drinking a soda or whatever? Is it just that he's like out of place, or is he like the director's buddy, or something? Like there's something about his performance that is like he gets way too much screen time, or I don't know. Do you know anything about this?
I don't. It's very. It does kind of feel a little out of place, because I mean, I don't really know why you have a security guard sitting in that little room the whole time.
It's weird that he's there. We don't really notice him at first until she asks him to do something, and then he's like, "Oh, I guess I'll put my soda down and do something." But I wonder if then it's just us trying. trying to like create a connection with somebody who's going to die in a horrible way so that it's more impactful. And that's actually sort of a little microcosm for the macrocosm of my biggest issue with this film, across the entire film, is that we don't know enough about these characters to care when they die or when their lives are in danger. And it's not like terrible, but like I even haven't seen the one after this one. I don't really know who Owen is. I don't really know who Claire is outside of they both seem to be workaholics in different ways. But you got to give me something. You got to, I was listening to our first episode of the series here and our talk about exposition, and that's what we get in that first hour before there's all that action. We get to know who these characters are, and we care about them. We know that Ellie and Grant are trying to fund their digs, and we know that they love this and they live and breathe it, and it's so important to them. And we don't know enough about anybody here, unfortunately. Like, in fact, I mean, the fact that you say that the assistant was reading Ian Malcolm's book is hugely important to me, because her death, while highly entertaining, as gross as that is to say, comes off as like, yeah, she deserves that because she sucked. But like actually there was more to her than that, and I wish there had been enough time for more exposition, and that's just sort of generally across the board here. But I do really love the way this paddock and escape scene plays out. I don't know what you can tell us about the behind the scenes of this, but like the camouflage and the not being picked up on the infrared cameras was all very interesting.
So in the Lost World Jurassic Park novel, the second novel, the Carnotauruses, who we haven't really seen in any of the movies until Fallen Kingdom, he has that little battle with the T-Rex when they're in the gyrosphere and then they fall off. That's the Carnotaurus. So in the book, they have the power to camouflage like a chameleon.
Oh, okay.
So it's been something always there, but nobody ever did anything about it. And so I guess they decided to do it with this one. It is very interesting how, because they used a bunch of different creatures, that this Indominus Rex managed to get every single special thing that all these creatures had.
Right. I mean, it does seem convenient until you realize that, you know what, this is what they're trying to do. Like, and DB Wong has this great monologue about, like, you wanted it to be scarier, more teeth, cooler, I believe is what you said. Like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't they? They would put all of these traits into this. They have this control, and we've established this for years now that they have the control, this genome control. So again, I buy it. I feel like maybe people are critical of that particular element, like it just so happens to have all of those traits, but of course it does.
Well, and speaking of that monologue that he gives, Henry Wu, is he mentions that, like, this is, and it's a great reference to the real world versus these movies, is because he mentions that, like, none of these are natural, but also none of these is what these would look like. These are what we think they want to look like, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these, for example, raptors, like the real velociraptors, are normally like the size of a turkey.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is
so
that
they're
true?
not. Yeah, they're not very big. So here you have it. Just these things that we've created, and it just kind of makes sense. So yeah, you kind of do, and if Henry Wu is part of the bad guys who have been planning stuff for the military, you want something that can camouflage and do all that stuff. So
yeah. So is that where the criticism of this movie lies? Like, I actually haven't heard a lot of criticism for it.
Yeah, so a lot of the criticism that people find is they don't understand the point of creating a whole new dinosaur. They thought it was too much of a stretch. I'm like, we're watching a movie about people going to see dinosaurs on an island.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a stretch for me. I mean, like, if we go back to the first movie and we're talking about cloned dinosaurs, that sounds like a recipe for a B movie here, and it kind of is, except it's been elevated by great filmmakers and great work, and this is sort of the natural progression of that idea. Is like, again, like I'm so glad they didn't just rehash it, and it's like we're trying to build a park again. Like when I first heard this movie was getting made, that was my assumption, was like they're just going to they're just going to try to build the park again, and it's all going to fall apart again. But to their credit, they said, no, we're going to actually jump into the future where we already have a successful park, and what can we play with in this world? And that is exactly it. The audience is bored, they've seen it all. What can you give them that's new? And so yeah, I really don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, no, I think it works. I think it was important. I think that's what made sense for the movie to do it that way. Um, so I think it worked, and I like the idea that this thing is just, and it does talk about animals in captivity, um, especially being raised, because it turns out that it had a sibling and it ate it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I love the way we find out these pieces of information about this dinosaur as well. Is like the fact that it, we don't really. I think maybe we see it decamouflage a little bit before the general characters that we've met here are aware of it having that ability, until of course Hamada shouts it out when they're trying to hunt this thing down. And its intelligence level, like it's just really brilliant the way that we learn these things about it, like the fact that it's set up this whole plan to get itself released by making you think it was already gone, and then all the way through to these bits and pieces of information to the point where it's like, oh, the missing, it's part T-Rex, but also, surprise, it's part raptor. And then the way that plays in and gels with the fact that, oh, these raptors that you thought were on your side are now turning on you because they're all part of the same family. It's actually really brilliant storytelling. The only issue I have is characters. I mean, there's it feels like I see on IMDb here, Omar Sy plays Barry, who seems to be Owen's either
Right hand
assistant or
man,
just
yeah.
another handler. That's a character that is so underused. Like there could have been so much more done with him. And like, again, I don't know who he is. I don't know, I don't know why he's there, other than to forward a few plot points, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he's supposed to be returning for Jurassic World Dominion as well.
So are we back on the island then? In Dominion? Oh, we've lost you again. Oh, we're yellow. Zoom says you're yellow. Connection speed. I can see you, but I can't hear you.
There we go.
Oh, there you are.
I couldn't hear you.
Oh.
What were you saying?
I was saying that like the characters that you're saying, like, so firstly, I hate spoilers. I don't watch trailers. I feel bad about having maybe spoiled some MCU stuff like in these conversations, but the fact that you're telling me that Omar is back, Barry is back, it sounds like we're going back to the island, and we must. Like, I'm sort of actively trying not to, but I want to know, is that what it seems like?
I don't know what's going to be happening. I just think that we're going to be overwhelmed with all these characters, because there's several characters that we meet in Fallen Kingdom that have been announced as returning as well. And then you've got all the original cast. And so it's going to be like, I don't know if we're doing like a whole like Love Actually New Year's Eve type movie where there's all these different stories that are kind of interconnected about dinosaurs.
Right.
No, it'd be very interesting. But yeah, like we've set up a very good movie, and this movie does so well. It just, the characters are very much secondary to the dinosaur action.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
And so now we've got the Anonymous Rex breaks out, and it's what I love about it is that, again, he's so smart. He manages to, or she's so smart rather, and she gets out. She's fantastic. She's on the run. And just in real life, and very evident to what's going on in the world these days, they're hesitant to close the park down or announce anything.
I was going to say, I mean, there's a fascinating element here when it comes to like emergency preparedness and emergency response versus monetary gain versus monetary loss, right? And this is where this is where it gets fascinating when it's like, okay, we know this thing's out on the loose and we've got a lot of tasty human beings for this thing to eat on this island. Do we evacuate? Is it no big deal? We've got this response team. We've got this this like epic Marines, the ACU, which are designed purely for getting animals back into containment. But of course, Owen is like, you're using non-lethal, weapons. And like again, like you say, it's interesting to watch through this lens, because COVID was a conversation about like, well, how do we determine how big a threat this is, and how much economic damage are we going to do to ourselves in protecting ourselves from it versus sort of saving human life. So it is a timely watch, at least in this sense. What did you think of the way this played out when they were trying to recover, or Indominus, or put it back into containment? And it has fooled everyone, and the tracker is not inside the dinosaur anymore. It has removed it.
I mean, I mean, that's a big tracker.
It's
so
huge.
it does.
And I got to thinking about, like, did they put it in it when it was a baby? But it couldn't have been that big. They must have.
No, so that's what, because at first it makes it even more of a stretch, and it's real astounding that it remembers as a baby. But that clearly is a newer one.
They must have put a new one in, yeah.
Yeah, so, these things are very smart, and she seems to be a very smart creature, and she's part raptor, so it makes sense. And so I do love this whole sequence where, rips it out. And while we're talking about the scene, there is a reference and callback to chaos theory, is because the blood drops, like Ian Malcolm dropped
on
the water
wrist
on Ellie, but then they go, and they go in different directions, just like in the
I didn't notice that part. Interesting. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's so great. And I mean that's the kind of thing that, like, if you're a fan of this franchise, like, it's really nice when a franchise will pay that off. And in probably, I think, maybe the next shot or the next moment or two, there's this beautifully done decamouflage moment from the Indominus, which is like maybe the most fascinating. It's one of those moments where you're like, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Are the leaves moving? But no, this face of this dinosaur sort of appears in the movement. It's so brilliant. Like, that is maybe one of the all-time great shots of the franchise, I think.
Oh, I would agree. I think it's fantastic. And then we just see how, like, ruthless she is, and we get to watch. And I love that they keep coming back to the control room to have these, because now you've got humans, not just the audience, but you have real characters, humans, witnessing a dinosaur kill humans.
Yes,
and
yes.
You see their reaction, and
like Bin Laden raid style, we've got these cameras in
and we, for some reason, we put life trackers and health.
Yeah, we've got, of course we have to,
which allowed, though, one of these guys gone in to save the dinosaurs is named Craig. So there's we do have a Craig in the Jurassic World universe, which is I'm very excited about that. I was like, oh my god, that's my name.
It's finally there.
But but it's super fun, and we're just like, oh shit, all right, we need to do something here. We need to do something more. This is evil.
It is a cool element. And I wonder if there was an incarnation of the script where maybe Owen was a member of this containment team or something, because there's a movie there where, we're telling it from that perspective. But so then in the control room, like you said, the voice of reason, Owen says, something like, you've got a 50 cal or some giant gun, throw that on a helicopter and take this thing out. And the question is like, well, we spent, I don't know how much it was, multiple millions of dollars creating this thing. We're not just going to kill it. But so what I love about this, and where Masrani sort of makes the better choice rather than what Hammond chose to do, is he's like, okay, no, he goes and has his conversation with, I can never, Dr. Henry Wu, you have it memorized, I don't. He's going to take it out himself, which is which I love as like I didn't see that coming at all. Like you expect the Masrani character to be the one who's obsessed with the prophet and not as concerned with human life. So I love that they flipped the script with that character again. I think it's a really, really well done character.
Well, and speaking of, and where Maserati is deciding he's the one who's going to go take the helicopter, I want to mention in that scene, and we haven't mentioned her yet, but there's two great comedic actresses that are always like the best friend or secondary characters in this movie.
Right.
And
Yes.
you have this one in this scene, Lauren Lapkus, who is in the control room, and she gets a great line later on near the end when she's leaving. It's fantastic.
Yes.
And then you have Judy Greer as the boy's mom,
who Arrested Development has like one of the greatest runs in Arrested
yeah.
Development. It's
Oh,
fantastic.
she's fantastic, and they're just these two actresses that are.
Oh, I don't know if. Oh, you there? It's like there's like a cycle. It's like every every 10 minutes or so. It's like disconnect.
It's fun.
There, there we go. You're back.
But
So
yeah,
tell me, tell me.
it's fun to have these different characters kind of in it, and I don't know. I felt like Judy Greer was a weird choice because she is like a name and people recognize her.
Yeah,
She has
it's
so
true.
little to do, really.
It's so true. But you're so right to shine the light on Laura Lapkus, because she is a treasure. Like, she is just so funny. I love Crashing, and she is fantastic in it. And she's just in so many things. Although I have not seen this this Netflix movie she's in called The Wrong Missy, because it looks really bad. It looks and to be honest with you, it looks like they've done her dirty. Like, she's such a great performer in it. I mean, I again, I try not to watch trailers, but that movie looks like a train wreck in and not her fault at all. But it just looks like demeaning to women. And anyway, maybe I should watch it before I criticize. But she's fantastic, and you're right, she does have a great line coming up. Give me your thoughts. I've already given my thoughts about this conversation between Wu and Masrani. The more I think about this scene, the more it sort of feels like, man, this is sort of the balance of this is the scene that is when we've identified these themes already, but it's the balance of like of the before and after, right? Like where Wu is there for sort of the birth of these dinosaurs, and now we're here for the rebirth. What do you think about it all?
It's very interesting because it does definitely start changing who Wu is compared to what we've known of him, which is very little.
Right.
And it's just such an interesting scene and conversation that's very reminiscent of the first book and conversations first movie, that conversations like that the lunch scene when they're all sitting around the table in the first movie and they're discussing this right or wrong. Ellie mentions like, you've got plants in here that look good but they're poisonous. So it's very similar to that scene, and I just love the way to discuss it and the way Wu justifies his reasonings. And there's a great line like, monsters like a relevant term or whatever, to a bird, a cat is a monster. Like,
right.
We're just always used to being the cat, and now we got something else to terrify. So I just think it's great, and especially because Maserati says like, it can camouflage you. He says something to Wu about something he can do, and Wu was like, it can do that? Like, he doesn't even know what
Okay. Interesting.
he doesn't even know what he created.
Right. Yeah, it's a really fascinating scene, and it's nice that it sort of takes the time to go there, because there's a lot we're trying to do with the kids. There's a lot we're trying to do with Owen and Claire, and so I'm so thankful that they didn't, because it's an easily cut scene from an action perspective, right?
And this is the thing, and we're talking about maybe the character development's not as strong as other
Yeah.
Jurassic movies, and it's so accurate for 2015, sadly, in the audience.
Right.
And then it's such a great scene, these two, and it's in the middle of everything. We've already had the dinosaur escape. Things are going bad quickly. It's clear that it still took a moment to have these two characters just talk
Yeah. Yeah.
and discuss something very intellectual. Is You wouldn't see a lot of that nowadays in these type of
Mm-hmm.
movies.
And it's a great uh, indicator for Fallen Kingdom, and what Henry Wu goes on to do. Big part of the trailers and the marketing for this film was the gyroscope ball things.
The gyrosphere.
And what do you think of that?
So very interesting. I don't know if from a standpoint of a theme park, if that's a smart idea. Like,
Right. It feels like on the surface it's a great idea, but then maybe it's not.
because it's going around like Triceratops, and they indicate that these glass is really strong. But as evident when the Ankylosaurus come into play and the
Yeah.
Economist, like something knocks it off. But it's very interesting, and I love because Jimmy Fallon hosts the Universal Studios tour.
Yes, that's right. He hosts the Universal Studios, which I've taken a few times. And I hope I'm not talking over you, but I think you've disconnected. But yes, I'll pick up where you left off there, which is that it's so fantastic that he's doing these little videos, and making a bit of an ass of himself, which he does in real life. And again, it's another indicator of like the difference between like real life and the movie. I mean, even the emblem. What shirt are you wearing today? Do you have it on your shirt?
Yes,
Yeah,
I've got.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that is in the marketing, but it's also on shirts and on every Jeep, and like the fact that it's the real world marketing device, but it's also the movie world marketing device is very interesting. But I think it's again like a great indicator of like what would this really be like? Yeah, have Jimmy Fallon on the screens there, and the way the ball gets like beaten around by the Ankylosaurus and stuff, like I thought that was great.
Oh, I think it's great because we've seen brief glimpse of them in Jurassic Park 3 as they're like passing by near the end there. But this is, I mean, not that they're given a lot to do, but we have a little battle sequence here, which I like because there's not enough in all the movies. There's not enough dinosaur on dinosaur action. Specifically herbivores versus carnivores.
Right.
We had in Jurassic Park 3, we have the T-Rex versus the Spinosaurus, but we don't, and we have the raptors versus the T-Rex all the time. But this is a time that we get to see, because this is really what they would be like. Is they would be fighting, and so it's really, really cool. The whole sequence, the idea that these two kids are just stuck in here, and then they get trapped, and then to a fun reference that they do to the original movie is they're stuck in this vehicle, but in the original movie they got the flashlight that signals the T-Rex to come over, and this one being 2015, it's a cell phone.
Oh yeah, that's right, the buzzing of the cell phone. That's right. Again, from a storytelling perspective, what's so smart about this moment too is the fact that, I mean, firstly, I love the Ankylosaurus. That's sort of a low-key favorite of mine, which hasn't had a lot of screen time in the franchise. And but the other brilliant thing is like, okay, we're learning about the power of the Indominus, the fact that okay, now it's coming up against a new enemy that can actually fight back and has armor and stuff, but it still figures out a way to beat this enemy in a really brutal way. But I love that you see it try to like clamp down on the shell piece, but that doesn't work. And then what's so smart about it is, Indominus is killing everything and everyone that it comes in contact with, and that starts to like lose the stakes, right? Like later they do a good job of it, as you mentioned, and Owen has that line, he's just killing for sport at this point. but the fact that the kids are trapped in this fight just adds to the stakes in a really smart way. It's a really nice piece of storytelling, and keeps us engaged with the fight. So what happens next? Where do we go from here?
So the kids get out very luckily, and then they dive into the water.
Oh yeah, which is another great shot where they just make it.
They just
I mean,
make
again,
it.
like
It's
the child in me is like so terrified of are they going to be able to make it?
and again, even though that's not a like animatronic Indominus Rex, it still looks great in that shot. But I think what makes so much of this fantastic is that they really spent a lot of time doing outdoor shooting. You got the control room and the visitor center, but they spent a lot of time outside, which I think really adds to it and the feel of it.
I mean, that was a challenge in the third one. I think a lot of that outdoor stuff felt a little contained by the fact that they were shooting in a studio for a lot of it, even though it felt like you were outside. Yeah, that was not the case. Going back to the second one, I can't keep these titles straight, Craig.
The Lost World.
The Lost World, Jurassic Park. We had our extras. We had all this extra sort of meat that dinosaurs could eat. We didn't have that in the third one, but now this moment in the park where the dinosaurs are getting to the masses. What did you think of this whole sequence?
This was interesting because this is kind of what if Jurassic Park 4 was going to happen, they were like, oh well, it's going to be in a city, no more jungle. So this was a nice hybrid because it was still technically the jungle. But you got to see it, and so it's such an interesting scene because here you have all these people who just wanted to come see these dinosaurs and didn't think that, oh crap, no, these are real vicious, scary things. And it only made sense that it was flying dinosaurs because it just adds to that, like,
oh yeah,
here it's going to come from wherever. And so it's a very heightened moment.
Yeah, and I mean, one that like you assume would happen if this again, like playing it for like the reality piece. This is like, okay, yeah, I mean, I can sort of envision myself walking down, Disney World, and this being the sort of the horrible situation.
Exactly. This is Main Street. This is the main shops there, and it's just as crowded. I mean, with rules now put in place to limit capacity, this is what theme parks used to be like, and you would be
totally
surrounded by these people, and it's just so well done. And of course, we have to mention Jimmy Buffett is the best performance to ever exist.
Absolutely. Margaritaville.
He is their host in Margaritaville. That's at Jurassic World, and he's the guy running away with 2 margaritas.
It's such a great cameo, and it's so perfect. What are these things that are flying? There are clearly at least 2 different species of flying dinosaurs.
There is the pterodons, which are the ones that we saw in the third movie, and those are the bigger ones. And then there's it's like the Demetrosaurus or something like that. Those really ugly square head guys.
Yeah, it looks like little T-Rexes with wings.
Yeah. It was interesting that they chose a couple different ones, but it made sense because you have the big guys and then you have the little ones.
Yeah, for sure. And then this sort of death that I was talking about with the assistant happens, and it is pretty darn epic.
She is also, we should point out that this is the first time that like a female really has ever been killed in any of the movies. Not thinking about all the random casualties that possibly happened in The Lost World.
Right.
We've never had a named female character die before, and she gets the most brutal death to ever exist.
No doubt, and so does that the pterodon, which is the way the Mosasaurus. I'm learning a lot.
You are.
But I can't. The way it gets bit with the wings out and like the head out, it's I mean it's it's weird, but it makes total sense. It was
And
it was
I
pretty.
wanted to mention this is such an interesting world that we're in now when it comes to so many things being CGI.
Hmm.
Um, because that shot's in the original trailer, but you cannot tell that like she's there at all
Right.
uh, in the trailer, and they like CGI'd her out, and it's very evident to like um, Endgame, for example. There's scenes of them walking when spoiler alert, the Hulk's there,
Right. Right.
but they CGI'd him out of and Fat Thor.
Right.
They don't
Yeah.
have them in the trailer, even though they have the shots of all of them walking.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that kind of stuff. So when they take the time to maintain some of the surprises and keep a surprise. Is that what happened here, or are you just talking about you're
Yeah,
trying to say they didn't show that
they
she
didn't.
was killed, right?
Yeah, so they do have it in the trailer of the Mosasaurus like leaping up to grab the
Right.
pterodon, but
Right.
you can't see her whatsoever in the trailer. But yeah,
Okay.
it was interesting because when she drops into that water, like obviously you see the other pterodons like diving under the water behind her.
Yeah.
But I know I was in the theater and I was like, oh shit! Like as soon as she was over top of the water, I was like, oh no, this is not going to end well because I knew
Yeah.
he was in there somewhere, and sure enough, he plops out, and it's just so fantastic. We've had Owen and Claire. Oh, you know what? We skipped over. We have the original visitor center.
Yes. Yes. We can't leave without mentioning that.
So, okay, I love the idea of it, and I think it's fantastic. And they have the banner when dinosaurs ruled the earth on the ground, and they
Yes.
use that. They've got the night vision goggles,
Hmm.
the jeeps. They've got so many references, and but I don't understand why this company has built everything else and just left that there decaying.
I mean, it's a good point. My thought was like, okay, well, they determined that there was a much better part of the island for the use of sort of the visitor center, the main street type space. Um, and I mean, yeah, it's not perfect, but what I do love about it is that they pull that banner out, and rather than just letting it be fan service, they turned it into a torch. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool that final moment of Jurassic Park sort of it has this new life as sort of helping the kids navigate this area. The jeeps were a little weird. Like I don't know that they would still be working, but and it was cool to see the it was cool to see the night vision, but it was not like it wasn't used in the same way of like, oh, it's just, oh, there's a little fan service. But there's a good mix of those things, and again, I think it's nice to flash back when we can in intelligent ways to the previous films.
And
um
we also use the banner to make the torch as a way to because we've mentioned it before, but now we're reiterating that Gray has his fanny pack, uh,
oh, right.
which comes into play later in the movie when
Right.
he's
Right.
almost chow to the dinosaur. But yeah, no, it was interesting, and I liked that they acknowledged it. It seemed weird to me, but I allowed it just because it was so much fun to
Right.
see this whole thing. And then
Right.
the Indominus Rex goes and destroys it.
Right. So, how much do you know about? And I don't know all that much, but the hero with 1,000 faces, or the hero's journey as a storytelling sort of trope. Do you know about this idea? This.
Do you think I know something of it?
All right. Well, I mean, what you do know is that you see it all the time, and it's basically, for those listening, the hero's journey is, it's sort of like a circular storytelling tool where our hero, there are basic moments and elements. Like, for example, there's like a section that's all about determining who your allies and who your enemies are, and these films usually follow this pretty solidly. But what's interesting that you brought up earlier is that Trevorrow doesn't really feel like this is Owen's story. So I mean, I think you can't deny that he is a protagonist, and so I think it's fair to say that Claire and Owen are sort of dual protagonists, which is fine. One thing that happens in every, and it's listed as a story element, is like when the hero is called to action. You know, let's look at The Hobbit. There's always a refusal of the call, and you know, it just always makes the story more interesting rather than the hero saying, "Oh yeah, I'm in." There has to be like a convincing thing, and we see Grant go through this in the first film and the third film, although he's much more easily convinced. Like he's actually pretty easily convinced both times, but you know, Malcolm does it as well when he's like, "No, I'm not going to do what you want. It's a rescue mission now." What's interesting is that Owen would sort of fill that character role in this film. But he never has that moment. He never has that moment of like refusal of the call, because what he's being called to do is check out a paddock, and then it takes off from there. And that's actually good storytelling. But now we're getting to a moment in the film where he's being asked to break those raptors out and use them to help stop this Indominus. And he says yes, and he's already sort of put up a fight about using them in this way. What do you think about the way this sort of plays out? It's an interesting moment in the film where the kids are being put in the truck, and Claire is sort of off on her own, and D'Onofrio is trying to break them out, and Owen is like, "Okay, we're gonna do this, but please don't shoot my raptors."
Yeah, it's interesting because he's very much thinks it's a stupid idea. However, he's like, well, if it's going to happen, I need to be a part of it.
Yes,
which makes
exactly.
sense.
Totally.
But I mean, I just it's very, and I think it was just so we could have that shot of Chris Pratt on a motorcycle.
I mean, that is a great shot. Let's
I love
be
it.
honest.
It's fantastic.
He's rolling with his homies. It's pretty amazing.
But you know, it's interesting because, and as a sequence as a whole, when you really like watch it, see how quickly the raptors turned on the humans when the Indominus Rex comes into play. I think that's great because it would have been weird. You know, the raptors are very smart, and we've indicated that, you know, they're kind of the baddies of these movies. Like, they're the scary, dangerous ones. And so I think this was the only way we could get them there.
Right.
And so what's interesting is I felt like they went really far away. And then when the raptors turn on the humans and they start attacking, then all of a sudden, like, the raptors back where Claire and the boys are.
Yes, yeah, that was another little teleportation moment. It does feel like we're rolling with them for a while. We must be somewhere quite different, but then nope, they're right there. But again, like if there was more, like it's a really great story. It really is. If I just knew more about these characters, it would make me care even more. But that moment where the raptors are clearly having a conversation with the Indominus, and they're like, "Oh, we're actually buds," and that turn moment, and you see it with the camera, and we get the reference earlier that, you know, it looks at what it wants, and they're all looking at Owen. It's actually I think really brilliantly done. I was very pleasantly surprised by the way that this moment played out, and that reveal, this sort of final piece of information about the Indominus being part raptor as well, which I mean, I don't know, maybe some people saw it coming. I just didn't at all for some reason. I don't know. I mean, we know there's a mystery piece of genome here, but I didn't see it coming, and maybe that was partly me trying to turn my brain off about that. But I was like, of course, the T-Rex plus raptor, like everyone's two favorite dinosaurs in one. It makes total sense.
No, and yeah, like you said, I think it the whole sequence just works out fantastic. You know, when you hear and see the idea of, you know, Chris Pratt on a motorcycle with raptors running beside him sounds ridiculous. And you're like, oh God, what are they going to do to this movie? But you watch it and it totally works and it makes sense, and it's so well done. And then again, just to show how smart these creatures are, but how dangerous they are, that they just turned like that. That was the easiest turn ever. That's literally just, hey, I'm kind of like you, so go kill the humans.
Right.
All right, cool. Like,
Yeah.
easiest turn in history.
They are easily swayed, but of course later on they're struggling with which side they're on.
Yeah, so I like this because now so people have left the island. It seems like a lot of them have.
Yeah, that was sort of left out. Like there must have been some big evacuation that was successful that we didn't really get. I mean, maybe there was some indication of it but by nightfall it seems like everybody's gone.
Yeah. We did have the staff leaving except for Lowry, and we get that wonderful scene. And it was an improvised line by Lauren Lepkus. She when he goes to kiss her, and she's like, "Oh, I have a boyfriend." Oh, you never mention it. No, it's because we're work. Like, gotta keep things separate.
Right.
So good.
It is. It's fantastic.
And it goes with. It plays great because earlier we saw the kind of out of nowhere kiss between Claire and Owen.
Yeah.
So it was just this nice little moment, and we still clearly needed somebody in the control room, which makes sense. I don't understand why everybody was going to go anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that was the screenwriters trying to say, like, because I got to tell you, man, as cheesy as it might have been, that kiss made sense to me when I watched it last night. I was like, I'm into this. Like, this makes sense. So it was pretty smart of them to include another sort of romantic moment that does not play out like a movie moment. And yeah, it's very smart.
Yeah, and so and now we've also had the brothers bond a bit more, but again, it's so little that it just doesn't quite work. Although, like, I guess Lex and Tim never really had any moments, and we haven't had two kids
That's
since
true.
the first movie.
Well, you know what? They did have moments, and in ways that are like that's what really great exposition is when it's like it happens and you don't even realize it's happening because the focus of the scene is on something else, but you learn about the relationship. Just the way they sort of snapped at each other and bickered at each other, we would learn new pieces of information. She's a hacker, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's not as present in this film.
No,
unfortunately.
They have nice moments.
Yeah. What do you think of this moment where sort of the villain moment where it's like, I'm going to tell you all my secret plans, and then it's D'Onofrio is talking about like, whoa, we're going to use these raptors, and then he gets interrupted by a raptor who takes him out. It's another sort of weird moment that I can't really explain why it doesn't work for me super well. It seems a little convenient, I guess, that the raptor just targets D'Onofrio and they sort of escape out the back door is maybe the problem I have with it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's tough because the scene, I know what they were going for, and they had to really add in some moments and some explanation of what's been happening with and get them to see all these different creatures, like the scuttlefish, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's a snake. There's the iguana or the chameleon that changes color. So you're seeing all these animals that are there to kind of really indicate, oh, this is where they got different elements for the anonymous Rex. But
right.
they're running away from a raptor,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to go somewhere safe. And they felt like it was okay for them to pause in this open doorway.
Yeah.
But really, then to give the villain his monologue to talk about
right.
the future and what's going to happen.
Which I guess was like, okay, well then now he's dead. But I guess InGen continues and it was just sort of like disappointing that like, okay, this seems to be who we're left with as our human antagonist. And now he's gone. But yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe if we'd seen like his second in command or something, it just felt like, okay, well that whole plot line is kind of gone now. Of course, not necessarily, but it just, he represented that, and now he's gone. That felt a bit abrupt. But
I do want to say I go back and forth with when I watch the movie. There's sometimes I absolutely love it, and then other times I think it's kind of just too much. But how he sticks his hand out and it looks like all good, and then just
Yes.
right off. And
It's
it's
like,
one of the more graphic scenes
it
in
is,
all
yeah.
the Jurassic movies, I think.
It's true. And yeah, it's just like, yeah, I'll eat that. And then right after that, they're escaping. And you mentioned the hologram dinosaurs,
Yeah.
which again is a great setting up the payoff. That I think it's Claire who hits the button to turn it on,
Yeah.
and it distracts the raptor that's chasing them, which sort of saves them, at least in that moment. And it like, again, a great setting up a payoff that worked out fantastically well. And I loved seeing that the raptor trying to attack it and get distracted by it. It was good.
And then we have the Dilophosaurus in a scene, which
Right.
we've only have it in the first movie.
Right. And I remember that being a huge favorite of kids, especially. And you're right. That's one that has not made many appearances.
No. So now comes a great another great homage to the original movie is the kids and Claire and Owen are standing, like Alan, Ellie, and the kids in the command or in the visitor center in the first movie as the raptors are approaching, and sure enough they're approaching from different angles, so then they have to maneuver to realize that they're and it's almost identical to the original movie, and that's absolutely love it. And then the Indominus Rex shows up, and Owen manages to speak to the raptors, and we get this great little fight sequence here with the raptors versus Indominus, and then Gray is the one who points out, like, we need more teeth. And what is so surprising to me is we had that little reference to our good friend the Tyrannosaurus Rex, affectionately known to fans as Rexy, because it's been established that this is the exact same T-Rex from the very first movie.
What? Really?
Yeah, it is the exact same T-Rex from the first movie, who has been somehow living and surviving on this island for, I guess at this point it's been like 22 years.
Oh, wow.
So she's really weathered, like she's got scratches and marks from the previous raptor fight.
Right, right.
But it's so crazy because, and I love the T-Rex, and I hoped that something was going to happen, but I had completely forgotten about her. And then, he says we need more teeth, and then Claire's like, okay, and runs off, and like, Lowry, open in paddock 9, and he's like, are you crazy? And I'm like, what's happening? And I was like, oh shit. Like, and I love, especially after Jurassic Park 3, where the T-Rex comes and goes in a like 5-10 minute long scene.
Yeah.
It's nice that she's back and she gets to fight.
This is what I was going to ask you. Is this the redemption moment for the T-Rex? Because there's some beautiful photography happening here as well. The flare looks so cool on screen, and now that you mention it, there's an earlier moment where there's the flare being thrown at the goat, and I mean it makes total sense that it's the same it's the same T-Rex. But what do we know? Like, what's the behind? Like, how do you know that it's like? Is there canonical information that we don't know?
There is one moment when they're at the Rex paddock in the log, and the goats get the flares going to the goat there. You can hear, because Nick Robinson is speaking on the phone to his mom and being like, no, Aunt Claire gave us all these passes so we don't have to wait in line. You can hear the announcer in the background saying that this is the original T-Rex.
Oh.
Okay. It's very little and subtle. And yeah, Colin Trevorrow mentioned that it's the same one. So, we've got this older T-Rex here, 22 years, and has, at least been in this, what's interesting though is because she would have been wandering around the island for quite a few years, and then humans came and built cages and put her in again. But yeah, you have this great shot with the flare, and the paddock rising, and then the T-Rex slowly stepping out of the shadows.
Yes. Oh man, and you can see the eyes and the way it turns as she's running away. It's just like it definitely recaptured that sort of like catch your breath fear moment.
I was there opening night, and the crowd definitely. It was one of those moments where we couldn't hold back. Like there was noise, and people were excited, like because it was awesome. And of course,
It's a great moment.
we should mention another thing that this movie gets a lot of flack for is the high heels. Uh,
Right.
so Claire's in high heels the whole time, but you know what? It works for her character. She wouldn't have taken off her high heels to go travel like through the forest.
Right. And what else does she have? She's not gonna like go back to her whatever her house is or wherever she lives on the island.
This is who she is, and
Yeah.
would you prefer a scene where she like is stopping and changing her shoes and putting on socks and tying up her shoelaces? And I don't know. I think you can run pretty fast if you want to, even in high heels. And women who wear high heels day in day out, I think, are a bit more comfortable than say you or I doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard that she had to like train to like be able to run and move in the which I can't imagine it must have been
Yeah.
difficult.
So I mentioned in our last podcast recording about the Spinosaurus, and there's a reference to the Spinosaurus in this
I was
movie.
wondering. The poor Spinosaurus gets left out, but maybe
So
not.
the Spinosaurus is, and this is again, I think, to reference what happened in Jurassic Park 3. But the Spinosaurus is the skeleton that the T-Rex runs through
Oh, really?
as she's about to come to fight the Indominus Rex.
Right.
Claire throws the flare that way, and she runs this way, and she runs right through the Spinosaurus. That's the Spinosaurus skeleton.
Sweet.
So.
That's awesome. And the other sort of nice little throwback is the giant piece of amber with the mosquito in it that gets destroyed. But it's nice that it's like, oh, I mean, I wonder if that was where that T-Rex came from. Now that you tell me that it's the same one, maybe that was that first piece of amber.
So let me ask you, what did you think? Before you rewatched it for this podcast series? When was the last time you had watched Jurassic World?
You know what? I think I might have watched it twice around opening night. Like I went to this one opening night like Thursday, the Thursday previews that seem to always be available now. And then I may have watched it one more time, a few months later. Yeah. Why do you ask?
So what did you think of this whole? And this is one of the longest dinosaur fight sequences we have in the entire series. Yes. What did you think of this whole fight sequence here, especially compared to other big fight destruction scenes that happen in movies lately?
I guess for the most part, it was, again, it's like I love like sort of learning new information, and that's something that this is done really well. Like there's moments of like where the Raptors turn back against the Indominus, and then like that creates so much care for the Raptors. Like you start to know their names and yeah, I mean, I think there's there's that great like slow motion raptor coming to save the T-Rex moment. Like I think it's really well done. Like it checks a lot of boxes, and it does it in a way that sort of parses out the information that I want to learn about these things. And there's some real spectacle to it. Like they smash the buildings, and there's and of course the Mosasaurus moment is again I didn't see that coming at all, because it's like, what could possibly stop this thing? And I assumed, okay, well, maybe a T-Rex and two raptors could do it. But like the T-Rex is kind of getting her ass kicked a little bit, I think. And so yeah, the Mosasaurus moment is such a spectacle thing. I really like it a lot. Having watched it a few times now, it's with the exception of there being just a little bit of too much obvious VFX. Like that's the only thing that sort of detracts from it for me, is there's just something about the way that, dinosaur skin is playing in VFX against the light, and maybe if they'd had some rain, it would have been better. But yeah, there's just
this is the only Jurassic movie, actually Fallen Kingdom as well. But we got rid of our wonderful rain sequences that always happen.
Which I think really I was to the benefit of the Spinosaurus sort of climactic scene in a big way. But again, I'm seeing too much of the dinosaurs, and the problem is we can't have it both ways, right? Like I would be the first to admit, like if you're Spielberg, you kind of get that in the first movie, but now like if you're gonna up your game, we really just have to see them again. I go back to the Alien versus Aliens. We even at the end of Aliens, we see a lot of the Queen. We see a lot of her, and I think that piece of creature work is really really good and really makes sense, but is admittedly easier than what they're trying to attempt here. And yeah, I just I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point I hope we get to the VFX moment where it's like my brain just can't tell. There's just I'm not but still with this it just feels a little rubbery, a little bit lifeless. And it does get away with the fact that I don't know what a dinosaur actually looks like, but and it's one of those terrible things. Like if you I don't know if you've ever had like clients, but like graphic design clients will say like they have these nightmare clients who are like, I'll know it when I see it, and that's the worst. Like tell me what you want. The reality is I don't know what I want, and I'm not going to know until somebody sort of cracks the code and breaks it. And it's a terrible criticism, but it's just the reality.
I would say my thing with this big fight sequence, and I love it, and it's a lot of fun. But it goes back to something I mentioned earlier in an earlier podcast, where we go from in the Lost World, when we went from the CGI dinosaurs in the stampede scene, and then they get caught, and we're immediately cut to an animatronic.
Yes.
And you see their movements very different, and so here we have these guys who. And I've never really seen two dinosaurs fight, so I don't know
Right.
how much somersaults and crazy acrobats are actually happening.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It would kind of take
yeah. So I mean, like that's pretty much the film. We get a little bit of our reuniting with the family moments, and of course Claire, I think has a bit of a redemption moment with her, trying to be a better aunt. And then of course we sort of wrap up the romantic plot line that maybe these two are gonna get together now.
Yeah, and we end with that line. We should probably stick together for survival purposes. It's like, oh, come on. But he would say that, as
He
cheesy
totally
as it is,
would.
he would say it. So I
Totally
accept it. I just like they did a really good job with this movie. I think it is exactly what needed to happen. I love that they have this theme park that has been running, and really the whole purpose of it failing is greed, and people just wanting to make money.
And which is the same themes as Jurassic Park, but done in a brilliant way, which is fantastic. And one thing I said earlier about I just want to quickly mention that this feels like a really modern movie, and it is, with the exception of the sort of, just because we were talking about the romantic moment when Claire goes to see Owen and they talk about their first date. There's some like surprisingly sexist stuff happening in that scene that I'm shocked they could get away with in 2015. And I don't know that they fully did necessarily, but I think anyway. We'll talk. I guess we're not spoiling, but they don't end up together, which is actually great and fantastic. But we'll talk about that next time. One quick other thing I wanted to mention is the incredible what's called like transmedia campaign or digital media campaign that was a part of this film. And since we last talked about it, I've learned more that there's that like much like Lost used to have like websites that they would build for companies. You would see, Maserati Global has a website, and there's a little backdoor terminal where you can enter some codes in and learn. You can read logs from Dr. Henry Wu and like canonical things that are part of the story. And there's a little bit of information about how smart the Raptors are and the first indication that they started working together and stuff. I love that kind of thing. And one thing that they did really brilliantly was if you signed up for the email updates about the park opening, you would get this live feed of cameras in the parks, and you could see the Tyrannosaurus or the Triceratops is over here, and you could see like everybody's having a chill time, and it's impressive because it's stuff that would have had to have been shot with like hundreds of extras, right? Like you're seeing, and these extras are just walking and having to like for like a full minute before it like repeats. But then when the movie was coming out, they sent out an email that was like, just in case you have loved ones at the park, there's a bit of a situation happening, and you could watch the cameras again, and everything had gone haywire. And again, like this is extra performance, additional work that was done outside of the actual shots that the film was capturing. There's terrifying stampedes of people running away and dinosaurs on the loose, and admittedly it's like on these cameras that I don't know if you can still find this stuff or not, but it was so cool, and I was like, it pumped me up to go and see it because I was like, oh man, like shit's hitting the fan right now, and it was cool to see.
Oh yeah, no, I thought it was fantastic. I know I went to it lots, and I was like, give me something new. And I just thought it was so well done. And we don't really do this stuff anymore, and it's unfortunate because it adds this layer of fun and realism that it's like, oh, there's an actual island, like this is a real thing. So I go onto it, and it's a theme park.
Yeah, and it continues that like that amazing line that this film and this whole franchise walks, which is like, well, and especially this film is like, this is a real thing in the world of this world, but yeah, it's playing with that perception of like what's real and what's not, and just as the franchise is genuinely, it's another sort of extension of that, and I mean, for super fans of anything, it's always nice to have sort of new tidbits of information, and I'm sure there are people who like figured out how to hack into the terminal using the password, and they must have been like so pumped about it, and I read it on a Wikipedia page somewhere, and I didn't get that moment, but I mean, when you serve the fans in that way, it's something special.
These movies, they thrive off their fans, and they love their fans.
Yeah. Oh, I can't hear you. And again, I hope I'm not stepping over you, but while you reconnect, one of the biggest fans of this franchise of all time, I'm sure, is you. And we, I don't know if that's where you were going with that, but we should mention that we would love to get you in this franchise in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, I will do anything. I will be Owen's younger brother. I will be.
You'll be running with margaritas somewhere.
I will gladly run away with margaritas somewhere if you want it. I'm open for any and all suggestions of what I could be Jurassic World Dominion. I would take anything. I would be.
They'd be lucky to have you.
Thank you. I would pick up poop from the dinosaurs if need be.
There you go. That would be awesome, actually. Is it animatronic poop?
I hope so.
So is that where you were going with that, or I didn't mean to cut you off? I hope I wasn't.
No. I love these movies, and the fans. When you're a fan of these movies, and I am obsessed. I'm wearing my running Universal 10K shirt. I went down to Universal Studios Hollywood in this past November, and
oh, really?
Participated in a 5K, 10K run through Universal Studios Hollywood.
What? That's awesome.
And it was Jurassic World themed. So
nice.
We got to go before the park opened, and I ran through the back lot. I ran through Hogwarts. I ran through Whoville.
That's awesome. I didn't know anything about this.
War of the World scenes, Bates Motel.
Yes.
I did it all, and it was one of the coolest experiences I ever had.
That's weird.
I never ran a 10K before, but I was like, you know what? It's Jurassic. Let's do it. And I've never done a solo trip either, so I was a little nervous, but it was so much fun.
Wow.
I had such a blast doing it.
What a great reason to go.
Yeah, and so it was great, and I did it because it was Jurassic. So I will do anything for these movies, including 10K.
So hashtag Craig finds a way.
Craig finds a way. Hashtag Craig finds a way. Everybody, spread the word. Let Colin Trevorrow know that I will. I will be his assistant.
Totally, of course. I would kill to be his assistant.
I'll do whatever you need. So there we go. We got 4 movies down. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and a quick little talk about Battle of Big Rock, the short film that was released that takes place
Oh
after it.
yes. And dude, the more I find out about this franchise, like there was like an animated series that didn't end up happening, and there's like the Lego stuff. I feel like maybe when we can wait, but maybe we should do another follow-up about all the other stuff that's in this franchise, because there's so much more to it than I realized, and I'm learning so much by doing this. It's cool.
Well, while we're talking about Jurassic World and stuff that happened, I'm super excited. It's supposed to come out this summer. We don't have an official release date yet, but on Netflix is the first official non-Lego animated Jurassic
Right.
Park animated series.
Something about a camp, like
It's called
Jurassic
Camp Cretaceous.
Camp Cretaceous. Okay. Oh, we lost you again, I think. You back? Oh, you're back, I think. There
Am
you
I
are.
back? There we go.
Yes.
So Camp Cretaceous takes place during the events of Jurassic World, and it's about, I believe there's like 6 teens who just happen to be on the island, and this is when the Indominus Rex escapes. So
Oh man,
it's this
that sounds awesome.
other secondary thing that happens, and super excited about it. It's going to be on Netflix. They've only released a quick little teaser of a raptor in the wild, and the animation looks amazing.
Oh, cool. I'm excited. I'm very interested in that. I love tie-ins. I love, like, and again, with a good franchise, when you've got like a web series or whatever. But they're not just, well, I guess we can't judge it yet, but hopefully they're not just happen to be on the island. There must be some sort of like camp program that
I'm assuming so. Yeah, they're very vague on the details, but shouldn't be
right.
much longer before we find out some more
Yeah,
stuff.
it sounds like it's soon.
And like this, what's great is that we have set up that Jurassic World has been open up for 10 years. It leaves the possibility of like a prequel series,
Yes.
or a TV show that could happen where, the people trying to deal with it, maybe there's not as much death and havoc, but it would be very interesting to see people dealing with a fully functioning park that with dinosaurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, is there? I mean, yeah, we can talk about games too, but we'll have to do a bonus episode.
Yes, we will. Well, thank you, Matt, so much for being here again today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you, everybody who dealt with the technical difficulties. My sister's basement. That's fun. Things go wrong. Just watch the movies. You'll see.
Exactly.
Life finds a way. Craig finds a way.
Craig finds a way.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at PTWCraig. Like us on Facebook, Passing Time with Craig. And check out our website, passingtimewithcraig.com. And we will chat soon. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.